So Homer wrote the Odyssey, and in it, Odysseus and his crew must pass through these treacherous waters, which contain the sirens. These half women, half bird creatures that draw men in with their singing and cause them to crash their ship upon the rocks. Apparently their songs were irresistible and drove men crazy. Now, I'm sure there is a lot in terms of the metaphor of how Greeks viewed women, and I'm going to save that for someone else to do. But there is something in how the Greeks understand music, and it's something I'm not sure I've entirely gotten in my life. Now, if you ever see me walking down the street, it's likely you'll see me with my headphones in my ears. However, that doesn't mean that I'm listening to music. More often than not, I'm listening to an audiobook or a podcast.
This book is about a naturally occurring pattern, a way of thinking.
Now, I get excited about ideas in a book and the way some people construct a sentence and present their ideas in the same way that some people get excited about trends in music or a new chart topper. And if you've ever looked on YouTube, there's a great deal of interest in the music we select. And it's something that I really struggle with because music isn't my thing. The reality is music has always made me feel a little bit out of place. Like I'm half a beat behind everybody else, and perhaps I just don't get it. It might be a surprise to some people to hear that I'm actually married to a music teacher, but music is something I struggle with, and I decided it was probably time I tried to investigate or understand my relationship to music. This isn't to say that I'm completely oblivious to music. I've always valued the place of music in good storytelling, and that's where I wanted to begin with. How does music connect to make a good story? I mean, I love movies, and some movies have profound, amazing, uplifting pieces that really draw me into it, and I can identify it, and I can often talk about it, but I don't necessarily understand why. So to get some help, I decided to go and talk to someone who is an expert in music, David Jones from Hillbrook.
My name is David Jones and I'm Director of Music here at Hillbrook.
Isn't that what I just said? I've always appreciated music and storytelling, but I wanted to really understand how ideas and themes that might be written into a story can be picked up and carried through with the music. So I asked David about how themes and ideas can connect with different pieces and how they're put together.
Music helps us connect with themes and ideas, and more than just that, it also could be the mood or the emotions of a character. It could convey a place or a time, and it does so by using our connections to those areas in some cases. So a galloping horse, sound of a galloping horse will straight away allude to that, but you can get the same effect in Schumann's Erlking. He uses this continuous triplet passage, this triplet feel going under the whole piece to allude to the fact that the main characters are riding along on a horse the whole of the song. So this is the sound. He goes get this triplet figure all the way through, and without directly doing it, it's suggesting that idea of a horse. So the motif does it, but it also can be combinations of there's rhythms or other musical elements that are combined that make a character or an emotion. So you could suggest Africa by using a particular instrumentation, drums, chanting, perhaps a foreign language as well. Minor keys are generally associated with darker or more somber sounds. Major tonalities would normally be associated with happier or lighter sounds. like this. So here's an example of a minor key. And this is an example of a major key. That was the same, effectively the same tune, the same progression, but with one note in each chord adjusted.
But he goes on to talk about how music can even connect us with characters themselves and to build an identification with that character, to foreshadow things about that character or to help us understand the character on a different level, be it musical theatre or even stage plays or movies themselves.
So Wagner was a late romantic composer, a terrible person but a wonderful musician. And he virtually invented this idea of leitmotif, where he'd give a character a line, for example, this descending chromatic. That might be associated with a certain character and perhaps a certain emotion of that character. So that character could not be on stage, and you hear that sound, and you associate it with the emotion or the character that Wagner suggested. In the same way that John Williams has taken this idea straight from Wagner. It's a direct development from Wagner's ideas of the leitmotif.
But David goes on to say that if you want to understand the power of music, you should see what happens when you remove music from a scene. Just like in the very powerful performance of Sarah Michelle Gellar in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode titled The Body. Buffy has just come home to discover her mum dead on the sofa, and notice the difference when there's no music in the scene. Now, they could have very easily put in a piece of music in the scene as an audience member to help us to connect with what was happening. But they very intentionally chose to take the music out of the scene, and look what happens. We're left with this unease, this displeasure, this discomfort. There's nothing to help us to connect with what's happening, and we're forced into the scene somehow. It's not a pleasant experience. Music almost helps break down the scene somewhat to help us to process that emotion. But without the music, we're left to process that, what we're visualizing, entirely on our own. So in some way, music helps us to enter into the scene. It helps us to, on some level, identify with what's going on and to connect us with how we're supposed to feel. Now, I'm making a documentary, and documentaries are no different. Music still helps us to connect with the characters. It still helps us to set the scene. It creates the tone, and it helps us to enter into what's happening. Just listen to how the work of Andy Milne beautifully encapsulates the characters in this documentary series, The Captains by William Shatner.
Star Trek captains have to be on it right away, because so often the camera's with us and we have to hit these unspeakable marks. Green screens, blue screens, non-existent aliens, spouting this language and setting the tone for the rest of our company.
Now, what this doesn't tell me is why I still connect with this music. As someone who's not a big music person, who doesn't play music or really understand music, why is it that I still see music as such an essential part of storytelling? In fact, it does move me on an emotional level. Why is that? Why is it so powerful for someone who is so disconnected with it? And I think David Jones provides a really interesting thought on this.
I think music is embedded in us, and there's suggestions, scientific research that suggests that it was the first form of language, it was before language was music, and that's how we communicated. And so I think there's a part of us that automatically associates certain sounds or certain tonalities or certain timbres or tone qualities, and it has an impact on us at a deep level that perhaps lyrics or words don't.
Music is this primal form of language that doesn't communicate to us like speech does, but it works on a subconscious level. It connects with an intuitive sense of what's going on in our mind as we watch and we see the story unfold. I think the Greeks really did understand music as a communication that happens on this subconscious level and takes control of us in ways we don't quite understand. This got me thinking about the work of Daniel Kahneman in his book Thinking, Fast and Slow, where he talks about the two systems of the brain, system 1, system 2. System 1, that intuitive, subconscious level of thinking that happens regularly throughout the day and works on our emotions and our thought processes before we even have a chance to really understand it. And system 2, which processes our environment and it thinks deliberately and concisely about what's happening. So music does seem to be this system 1 intuitive primal brain process that helps us to really appreciate the world and engage with the world without having to think through every single little minutiae bit of it. But I am a bit of a system 2 guy. And while I'll need the system 2 part for when I'm constructing my videos or putting together my documentary, it could be a bit of an indication that maybe I need to let go of my system 2 brain sometimes and just appreciate what's happening and to give over to that primal, that subconscious, and just embrace the music and let it carry me away. Screw it. I'm sticking to audiobooks. Ugh.